'Tis a football Thursday here on Birds 365 with your Mac and Mac buds, John McMullen and Jody McDonald. J-Mac, 150 days until the first Sunday of the season.
150, wow. It's creeping up on me.
We're counting down. More importantly, 14 days until the NFL draft and round one, day one. Eagles will have, as of now, 2 picks, not 3, 2. And we'll even be 2 by the time we get to draft day. We'll have to wait and see. So we've got plenty to break down on today's show. Got 2 good guests, 2 Philly guys. One guy who's not a Philly guy anymore, but he's going to be a Philly guy forever as far as I'm concerned. Marcus Hayes is going to join us coming up later this hour. And then Rob Motti, our buddy from the Associated Press, will jump aboard in hour number 2. J-Mac, what are your plans for the next couple of days?
Ton of draft stuff. I mean, it is, I was joking about the season creeping up on me, 150 days, but the draft, yeah, it's, I'm in the midst of all my previews, and that is a grind, as they say. So,
all right,
yeah,
well,
I wish the draft was 150 days.
No, you only got 14 to get ready for that. The reason that I asked was if you want to take a break, yours truly is home alone.
Oh, wow.
My 2 girls, one of which doesn't live home anymore. It's been a couple of years since she moved into Philadelphia, but she comes home on a bunch of different weekends. My 2 lady friends, my daughter and my wife, left this morning for a long girls' weekend in the great state of Maine, where my wife went on vacation every summer for her entire life. Her father is originally from Maine, and she and I have done many a vacation over the past 30 years that we've been either going out or married. And my daughter, because we've taken her up there a bunch of times, has also fallen in love with the place. So way back when on Christmas, both my daughter and I combined on a present for my wife to get away for a long weekend. I'm paying for basically everything, but my daughter is giving up her time to go away with her mom for 4 days to have fun up in Maine. So it's just me and the pooch around the house. So if you want to stop over,
now, could you hide your excitement? Because I have a tough time hiding my excitement. Now, while I say that as a fellow married person, that first 24 hours is maybe the greatest 24 hours in the world. But then you start to go, then it starts to get a little bit
It's
worse.
4 days. The first day or 2 is going to be phenomenal, and the 3rd or 4th, I'm going to go. Now, when are they coming back again?
Yeah,
Let me check the calendar again.
Exactly. Every time. That's the way it happens.
Same
But that first day, enjoy it because it's glorious.
But I'll tell you what I did yesterday, and I can't cook to save my life, but we're ShopRite people. I'll go to any good grocery store, but we got a good ShopRite here in my hometown. And if you spend enough money, you get a free holiday entree.
You want that route?
Like Thanksgiving or whatever. And we still, even though it's only 2.5 of us here in the house, we spend enough to merit a free entree. You get a big turkey for Thanksgiving or whatever. And I could have gotten a turkey again. I got a big lasagna, and I actually cooked it yesterday. So I'm going to be eating lasagna for the next 4 days because it's just so easy. You got to cook it originally, then you put it in the fridge, and it's just as good day 2, day 3, day 4. So I'm already set. My wife bought me like 3 or 4 days worth of meals.
See what I do, Jody, and it's, I live in Stratford, so you live in Marlton. Now I go, I go to the Wegmans in Cherry Hill, and then I just get pre-done meals, and then you're set for a couple days. Now and by the way, Xander, get ShopRite and Wegmans on the phone. We're giving them free plugs.
Giving them a big prep.
Yeah, give them, try to get them as sponsors. But that's the way I go. I get the pre-done meals. That's phenomenal.
I promise we'll get to football in a second here, Birds fans. But I'll tell you my quick Wegmans story. I'd never heard of Wegmans. I went to college in upstate New York, went and visited my roommate. He lived over closer to Buffalo than he did Albany, and went to just spend a weekend with him during the summer, one of the years we were in college together. And what are we going to do there? We're going to go hang out at Wegmans.
Oh, yeah. You can hang out all day at Wegmans.
I said, what's Wegmans? And he explained to me what I said. We're going to hang out at a grocery store. He said, no, Jody, you don't understand. Wegmans is more than a grocery store. We'll spend hours at Wegmans. I'd never even heard of the damn place. And that was upstate New York in the 90s. So it's made its way down here to South Jersey. It's a damn good store. They got quality stuff there.
I've written for hours in a Wegmans. Just take my laptop and go hang out at Wegmans.
The coffee barista in Wegmans. Oh, that's funny. All right. So, come on over, Johnny Mac. We'll get some beer, some girls. We'll do some stuff that we probably shouldn't do or talk about here on Birds 365. Maybe we should stick to the football. Anyway, 14 days counting down to the draft. No major rumors today. We'll create a couple of them for you. There was one piece of news in Eagle land yesterday, and that was Steven Nelson officially becoming an ex-Philadelphia Eagle, signed a 2-year deal with the Houston Texans. Original reports, and we'll see what the details are. You always got to wait because you never know who's giving out the details. 2-year, $10 million deal. Seeing as he played on a 1-year, $2.5 million deal for the Eagles, good for Steven Nelson. He got a pretty good payday. Whether the second year is a faux year or not, we'll find out over a period of time. But I thought Steven Nelson was a fine quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles last year. Not a star, not a needle mover, but not a handicap either. And one thing that only Jonathan Gannon knows for sure is, did he do his job in the Eagle defense? I've seen a bunch of stats put out there that quarterbacks averaged over 100 for a quarterback rating in plays he was playing on. I think that's what he was asked to do in the Eagle defense. They play a lot of zone, and they're willing to give up underneath stuff. So, there were going to be a bunch of passes completed against him, but I don't remember him getting burnt. Guy we mentioned yesterday on the show, Jalen Mills, who I always liked. I liked him when he was here. I liked him. And people remember the big plays that he gave up over the top. And how do we play this? Guy's always getting burnt. Yeah, but he made plays too. Yeah. That wasn't what Steven Nelson did in the Eagle defense. He kept guys in front of him. Yeah, he gave up some passes, but he didn't get burnt for any big plays. I think the Eagles are actually going to miss him. Deal.
Depending on, obviously, if they get a corner in the first round, maybe not. But if they're throwing Zech McPhearson out there, they're going to miss him. They're going to miss him. And competency is the way I describe Steve Nelson as the opposite corner to Darius Slay. And that's bigger than people realize because there's a lot of incompetency in the NFL at cornerback. He knows how to play. He did, in a lot of ways, you're right, Jody. He did what he was asked. He did what he was told. He's a microcosm almost of Jonathan Gannon's defense. Whether you want to call it bend or don't break or whatever term you want to put on it. He didn't give up a lot of receptions. He didn't give up a lot of yards, but he gave up a huge completion percentage and he gave up a huge passer rating, because everything was underneath. And that's what the Eagles were trying to do. And they were trying to make people go on 16, 17 play drives, those long drives where the mentality is, well, eventually you're going to make a mistake, holding penalty, bad pass, drop football. And too often they gave up those long drives, but that's another story. I thought he was a fine player, but he's one of those guys who, the NFL's weird. They have their mindset and they want guys who can run at corner. And he's not that blazing 4-4 guy. And he doesn't have the tremendous length, like the Eagles want. The Eagles love Tate Allen because he's so long and he's so fast. And, all right, he's a 6th-round pick. Go throw him out there. See what happens. There's more to playing cornerback than just being really, really long and really, really fast. And look, you and I have talked about this a lot, and the fact that we both agree, I think there's no such thing as a lockdown corner anymore in the NFL. The closest you're going to get is Darius Slay. He's top 5 corner in this league. Eagles already got one. If that's your definition, a lockdown corner to top 5 corner, they got one. So you can't have I guess you can mathematically, but it's very unlikely you're going to have 2 top 5 corners at the same time. So what you're looking for on the other side is what Steven Nelson offered you. And I thought, and Steve Nelson, I should, he likes to be called Steve, and everybody calls him Steven. So I want to show him his proper respect as he gets out of town. So I'm happy for him. He did a good job. He came in 2 days before camp. And, he was a big upgrade because remember, that was the plan. They didn't have anything else. So they were going to throw a 4th-round rookie out there. And you got to see Zech McPhearson a little bit when Darius Slay had some concussion issues. A couple games he went out early. And obviously they rested everybody week 18, I guess, against Dallas. Small sample size, but it wasn't great. And, I always use that term that Jim Schwartz gave me because I love it, startup costs. Now, maybe if he was forced into action week 1, he would have got better, and he would have got better, and he would have been okay by the end of the season, but you would have had some significant growing pains. And I think the Eagles are going to draft a cornerback in those top 51 picks. Yeah, depending on how the board falls, maybe it's not 15, maybe it's not even 18, but 51. One of those 3 picks is going to be a cornerback because no matter what Nick Sirianni says at the league meetings, they can't be comfortable with Zech McPhearson and Tay Gowan and Kerry Vincent Jr.
Probably got work to do at that position. You and I agree there. And I wish I could give credit. Maybe you can tell me because you're a writer and I'm not. I wish I knew. I would like to attribute this quote to someone particular because damn if I don't use it, damn if I don't overuse it. And it's been one that's been floating out there for 20, 25 years, whatever it is, that maybe your most important ability is availability. And you got to say that about Steven Nelson. He answered the bell 16 times last year. Every single game he was there and he was ready to play. And that's an important part of it. So much so that I think you and I discussed this here. I'm pretty damn sure of it. We knew when the offseason rolled around that of the 5 starting positions, and I say 5 because you've got slot corner, and the Eagles are well maintained at slot corner as a matter of fact. But if you take it down to the other 4, the Eagles had 3 guys who were free agents at their 2 safety positions and their second cornerback position behind Darius Slay. And if I had to rank the 3 as to what, all things being equal, which we know things are never equal, right? We can always say that, but how many dollars it's going to cost you, length of contract, everything else. But they were all in a relatively similar boat. If I had to rank the guys I wanted back in order, it would have been Steve Nelson 1, Rodney McLeod 2, Anthony Harris 3. And I was hoping the Eagles could retain 2 out of 3. Well, it couldn't have gone much more to the opposite. They only retained 1 out of 3, not 2. And the one guy they retained was the guy I would have ranked 3rd out of the group at Anthony Harris. Now, the deals are the deals, and that might have actually been something to move the needle. The Eagles' evaluation of the player is much more important than Jody McDonald's. But that was not the way I was thinking or hoping it was going to go with retaining their DBs who are on the free agent market this year.
Well, when it came down to the safeties, I thought they were going to choose Rodney, but I think they made the right football decision. I thought they were going to, bring Rodney back because of his, importance to this team from a leadership standpoint, importance to the city from a community standpoint. But just from a pure football perspective, I think Anthony's a little bit younger. He's faster, less injury history. I think it makes sense. Jonathan Gannon's comfortable with him. So I was pleasantly surprised, actually. I think they made the right football decision there. Now, they probably got to get better at both positions ultimately. So we have to see what's going to happen in the draft at safety. With corner, you could tell the Eagles' plan, and basically it was, all right, we'll see what happens in the draft, and if we're not able to get what we want in the draft, we're going to come back to Steve. And they're probably looking at last year and saying, well, we got him 2 days before the start of camp last year. He's still on the market this year. Maybe it's going to unfold the same way. And all of a sudden, here comes Houston with 2 years and he's gone. So you roll the dice in those types of situations. I think they wanted to use him as a safety net, and somebody pulled it out from under him. So now they don't have it. But that's sort of the game you play, and they're not the only team that does that.
Right, and just my supposition, you've got Eagle sources, I don't, but reading from afar, I think it's some of the young guys, the Tay Gowans, the Vincents, the Sacherays, that they have on the roster where they said, well, if worst case scenario happens and Steven's not there and we can't get a veteran guy and the draft doesn't fall our way, at least we have these young guys already on the roster. Okay. If you say so, yeah. I want to see it.
Well, if it's April 14th, I believe, and if they had to play a game today, Zech McPhearson would be the starting corner opposite Darius Slay, and just be thankful that they don't have to play on April 14th.
150 days until we get to that first Sunday of the upcoming season, as a matter of fact. John McMullen, I'm Jody McDonald. I see our first guest of the day is getting ready to rock and roll with us. Always fun when we get to catch up with Marcus Hayes of Daily News and WIP. He joins us next here on Birds 365.
Imagine for a moment that you went to work today, and when you came home, you were catastrophically injured. Your life and your family's life. That's what happened to union construction worker Mike Little.
I was scared of what the end was going to be, but to be 100% honest with you, I knew I was going to be all right just by talking with Brian. In my heart, I just knew everything was going to be all right.
Call the firm and find out why they say, "We got this." Call 215-458-2222.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass, free.
What's that?
A rocks glass?
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that.
Holy shit.
And you're telling me I can get one of these glasses for free?
That's right. One free rocks glass per customer with each first-time purchase of Stateside Vodka. So good, it just disappears.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on three. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Go for the midnight dares. Go for the memories. Go for the view that goes on forever. Go for the bubbles in your bathtub and in your drink. Go to bed whenever you want. Or don't. Go for him. Go for her. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Appreciate you streaming in with us here on Birds 365. McMullen and McDonald hanging with you. Got a good third voice to join us for the next 20 minutes or so. You're still reading them in the Daily News these days. You catch them on WIP hosting from time to time. Always good to catch up with Marcus Hayes.
Inquirer, Jody. You can tell the old school guys, Marcus. Inquirer.
Well, I still appear in both. They're both still kicking.
That's true.
You corrected me for no reason. I'm McMullen.
I'm sorry. Is that real? See, I'm old school guy.
You're only half wrong, Jody.
Yeah.
That's a typical Marcus Hayes answer. Well, you're only half wrong.
And I'm 100% wrong. See, I'm thinking ink, ink stained wretch. That's what I'm thinking.
Inky,
I'm thinking
that's right.
ink. Yeah.
Marcus, good to catch up with you, brother. Appreciate it. 2 weeks out from the NFL draft, your confidence level that Howie Roseman et al., including the owner, although he said he's less involved than he was years ago, how prepped, how ready, they've got some bullets to fire here. How big a draft is this for the Philadelphia Eagles?
It depends on what you mean by big. If you're looking for instant results, like something that's going to help them this year or next year even, become a relevant, contending team, then I have no confidence because they don't have a quarterback still. So it's all irrelevant when it comes to sort of instant gratification. So if you assume that it takes a typical quarterback, a non-free agent quarterback, at least 2 seasons to get up to speed, we're probably 3 seasons away from anything that happens this season mattering down the road. So that said, I guess the question for me would be, what do I expect them to do that's going to help them in 3 seasons? Honestly, I think they're going to take a quarterback, and I think they're going to take a wide receiver, and I don't think they're going to care how ready they are to how ready those players are to play right now. I think they're going to be looking at ceilings more than floors.
Interesting, Marcus, that you say quarterback because
quarterback. I'm sorry.
Oh, corner. Okay.
Yes.
That's what I was saying, because I want to talk about the trade early April, obviously, how he kicks the can sort of down the road another year by moving one of his first-round picks into 2023. Baker Mayfield came out, I don't know if you saw this morning, and was a little bit angry about how Cleveland has treated him. I think we all look at Jalen Hurts, and those of us who've gotten to know him at least a little bit in this pandemic world say, well, this kid can handle it. This kid, he's not Carson Wentz. He's mentally tough. He's going to keep competing no matter how many whispers. At some point, though, when you're this obvious behind the scenes, you can say whatever you want when the microphone appears. Can we just assume? Can we just assume it's always going to be that way, and it's not going to affect Jalen Hurts at all?
What the interesting thing about how they handled Jalen Hurts when they drafted him was they were very, very quick to reassure Carson Wentz that he was the guy, and that Jalen Hurts was his 4-year backup because second-round picks get 4-year contracts. So I believe they think that they don't owe Jalen Hurts anything except a paycheck for 4 years, because that's what they told him he was when he came to Philadelphia. And that doesn't – if he plays well enough for them to win some games, that to me frees them of any responsibility of replacing him even if he wins. Because unless he's the reason they're winning, and I don't think he ever will be, but unless he's the reason they're winning, they've told him, we drafted you in the second round and paid you, I think it's going to be like a total of $5 or $7 million because you're a backup quarterback. And until you prove us wrong, we owe you nothing. So I think that's the way Jalen Hurts approaches his day. And when he says, he doesn't always tell us the truth. He doesn't sometimes ever tell us the truth. But he does tell us the truth when he says, every day I come to work, I'm competing for my job. Because he knows there are throws he can't make. He knows there are limitations to his game. He knows he gets hurt. He's been injured at the end of the last 2 seasons. So I don't think he resents them I don't think he resents or will resent them until he proves to himself and the rest of us that he's a valid, viable starting NFL quarterback.
Marcus, speaking of telling the truth and or believing what you're hearing, let me put the Eagles on the microscope. From the time the season ended, they came out and said, Jalen's our guy. And to this point, they've done nothing to make us believe that that's anything but the truth, that they are going to give him the job. They haven't 100% wrapped themselves around him. He's our guy. And we're planning on him being the quarterback in 2030. But they said he's the quarterback for 2022, which I think we have to, by their actions, take at face value. But they've also said, and we need to put better weapons around him. Evidence, Zach Pascal, that's it. That's what they've done so far, to put better weapons around the quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles. Is it happenstance? They were almost Calvin Ridley acquisition away before he got caught for making illegal gambling moves. But the bottom line is the bottom line, and we're 2 weeks away from the draft, and they've done diddly squat to make Jalen Hurts' life easier. Are the Eagles open for criticism because of that?
Not until after the draft.
Okay.
One of the things that the Eagles have always done well since Jeffrey Lurie bought them and hired Joe Banner to run them is they've anticipated the market and they've understood what value really is. So entering this offseason, they understood very, very quickly how crazy the quarterback market was going to get. Not only was it going to take a king's ransom to move Deshaun Watson and to move Russell Wilson, you were then going to have to pay them another king's ransom. And I think that their calculus for quarterbacks has changed a little bit. It used to be the be-all and end-all, and now I think they think that they can maybe get something a little bit more get a little bit more value out of drafting quarterbacks than trading for them and signing them. And that's the big thing. The price tag on, Deshaun Watson, not only did you give up a king's ransom to get him, you then hamstrung your team for the next, 6 years, 5 years, effectively, salary cap wise. So I said all that to say, I do not think they had any idea that the wide receiver market was going to be what it turned out to be. And they had every intention of getting him a veteran wide receiver, not a Zach Pascal, a real veteran wide receiver, a number 2, number 1 type guy. I don't think they would have said that otherwise. They've been pretty honest. They told us last year was a rebuilding year. They've told us this coming year is a rebuilding year. I don't know if they meant that to be, but that's the way it's turned out. So maybe they should be held accountable for saying what they said and misevaluating the market. But I believe that every intention was to go out and get somebody who was going to help Jalen Hurts produce, number 1. Number 2, I think it might also change the calculus and the strategy of whom to draft in the first round. I mean, there's almost no scenario in my mind where they don't take a wide receiver with that was the 15th and 18th pick now.
And 15 and 18, and then 51.
So you're going to get, I think at 51 that, the guys who are going to help you are gone. The guys who are going to help you immediately are gone. But right. I will say this. I don't know how closely you guys follow the combine. I imagine you followed every second of it and, it's all its sights, sounds, and smells, because I know you both and you're big football nerds. But this was a spectacular wide receiver combine. I think they went to the combine and came away with like, oh my gosh, we've got some real options here. We can even trade a pick away and get somebody who can help us.
Well, I agree. That's the way college football has gone, Marcus. It's been that way for about 3 years now. It's just wide receivers all over the place, which is why it's so strange the Eagles can't find a wide receiver. Now, I put aside DeVonta Smith because he's different. And that's a very good player. He's going to be a very good player if he stays healthy for long term. So, but past that, the fact that this team we're talking about, wide receiver in the first round for a 3rd consecutive year. And you think about some of the shift when Doug was fired and they brought in Nick, and one of the big themes, Marcus, was player development. The old staff wasn't great with player development. This time they brought in a bunch of teachers. Not only are these guys teachers, Nick Sirianni played receiver. He knows the position. He coached the position. Shane Steichen has a history. They have Aaron Moorhead. They have all these guys to help players get better, player development. And I got to tell you, I think Jalen Reagor got worse. I think maybe J.J. Arcega-Whiteside was better as a blocker, but what did he catch last year, Jody? One? What was it? I mean, he's out there to catch the football. I didn't see improvement there. I think the staff as a whole did a good job, but at what point do we look at this team and say, you got to develop some of these young players? You can't just keep going wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver. Otherwise, you turn into the Detroit Lions. Maybe eventually you find Calvin Johnson, but you wasted so many other slots over the years. It affects your ability to build a team.
Well, I thought the biggest joke of the offseason, as you refer to the Eagles, is how they tried to tell us Quez Watkins was a good receiver and developing right on. I mean, I think Quez Watkins is a valuable weapon.
Yeah, he can run.
But you have to have a quarterback who can hit him. You have to have a quarterback who looks for him and can find him. And I don't mean to beat up on Jalen Hurts, but we're talking about wide receivers, and you only know as much about your receivers as your quarterback can tell you. That said, I don't think Quez Watkins was nearly as good as Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni kept telling us he was after we watched him. So to your point, I think they used whatever minimal gains or modest gains, I shouldn't say minimal, that they made with Quez Watkins as proof that they're on the right track with these receivers. Look at us with all this wide receiver commitment and draft capital and assets and coaching. We really do know what we're doing. Jalen Reagor is broken, and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside was a mistake. I don't know there's a whole lot there to coach. And the most damning issue when it comes to wide receivers is DeVonta Smith wasn't very good for the middle of the season. He went through a pretty serious slump. And it's kind of like when a pitcher tips his pitches or a batter shows a hole in his swing. You have to adjust, right? You have to figure out what's wrong and adjust. And they were very, very slow to adjust. And you know what their biggest adjustment was? Running the football.
And they did make that work for him, Marcus. John, by the way, you severely underestimate J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. Had twice as many catches as you suggested. That would be 2 for 36 yards.
Yeah,
hey, that's 18 yards a catch. Yeah. That's pretty good. You're getting 18 yards per catch. You're one of the best in the league. Got it more than 2, though.
Well, the analytics guys will tell you should throw him the ball more than.
Exactly right. Thank you, Marcus. Let me take you here, Marcus, because John likes to say all the time that the Eagles, one of the strong traits that they have is that they're a disciplined organization, that they don't overreact, that they have their tenets and they stick to it and they can show discipline. Well, one of their tenets is the offensive line. Will they stay disciplined and not take an offensive lineman with one of those first 3 picks because it's easily their deepest position on the team, or will Howie Roseman's DNA force him to take an offensive lineman with either 15, 18, or 51?
Well, that's where you and I diverge, Jody. I don't think you can have enough offensive linemen. I wouldn't care if they took an offensive lineman in the first 2 rounds every year, no matter how deep their offensive line is. And, how deep is it really? Who's your backup center? Somebody who's never played there before.
It could be Isaac.
Right, it could
Isaac
be.
Over the side. You could play Dickerson. Never played it on the NFL level, but he played it effectively at college. I think they're 3 deep at center
with guys who've never played it before. So and their best player, their best all around.
Certainly, anybody you draft is never going to have played it before either, Marcus.
Well, that's my point. You've got probably 3 positions on the offensive line where there are question marks as the backup. Okay. And let's be honest, Jalen Hurts is hot garbage without a great offensive line last year. And this was a great offensive line. And it's going to be a great offensive line this year. And this was a great offensive line, despite Jason Kelce being hurt for half the season, despite Lane Johnson missing games and being hurt. I mean, it was just Jason Kelce was injured but played, but he wasn't 100%. This was a spectacular job.
Hadn't that
by
been
Jeff
the last
Sauer.
5 years? Jason Kelce is injured but plays.
Yeah,
that's Jason Kelce's life.
That's how good he is. And when he's gone, we're going to recognize that's how good he is. Yeah. So, I mean, I wouldn't care if they took an offensive lineman. My draft formula is no matter how good your lines are, you should take an offensive and a defensive line inside your first 75, 80 picks every year because they will get hurt. And you can trade an offensive lineman that's capable at any time during the year. It's much easier to trade a capable offensive lineman. Look what Dennis Kelly did after he left here.
Yeah.
You know, these guys stay in the league forever, and these guys.
Matt Pryor. People think he's terrible here. The Colts love him. The Colts love Matt Pryor.
Yeah, I mean who was John? What's the guy that went to Pittsburgh and became a Pro Bowler? The Army guy, Villanueva.
Alejandro Villanueva.
Yeah. I mean, these are just testaments to how valuable, mediocre offensive linemen can be and become. So that said, I don't think they'll be disciplined. I think they do take an offensive lineman, somewhere, in the first or second day, and I will always endorse it. But the same goes true, especially for interior defensive line. I don't think you can have enough of those, which we saw, since they signed the guy from the Jaguars who got hurt.
Talking about Tim Jernigan from the Ravens?
No, it was after Jernigan.
Jaguars.
Really nice guy.
DT.
So anyway, they signed a defensive tackle who got hurt in the first game of the year. He hurt his foot the first game of the year. I think it was 2019. Malik Jackson.
Malik Jackson, yeah.
So he hurts Malik. So you can't have enough good young offensive or defensive linemen, and you can't have enough good backup offensive linemen. And think about this, Jody. Every one of those backup offensive linemen that they drafted and stored and taught, every one of them played last year.
Yeah. And they played pretty effectively. That's why I'm saying I don't think they need to draft an offensive lineman. Here's my philosophy with the Eagles and offensive line as of right now. Feel free to use a 4th, 5th, or 6th round pick on an offensive lineman and watch Stoutland make him a starter in the league. I'm not taking a 1st, 2nd, or 3rd rounder. Give Stout a 4th or a 5th or a 6th and then make him into a viable start.
That's not a bad plan. Jordan Mailata, 7th round pick. Jack Driscoll, 4th round pick, right, John?
Yeah.
So that's not a bad plan either. But again, you will never hear me criticize the Eagles for adding offensive line depth. And let's be honestly, unless you're going to get a guy of the talent, not with the caveats, but the talent of a Dickerson. You don't draft anybody in the first round, but usually anybody in the first round who's there at 15 or 18 is a project anyway. If you have a just add water offensive lineman, they're gone early because remember the Lane Johnson draft? Offensive tackles went 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, and Chip Kelly wanted to take Deion Jordan, so the Eagles got lucky there. Got Lane Johnson, and by the way, Lane's going to be 32 next month.
And he misses time every year.
Yeah, and he's got that ankle, which is, a complete reconstruction. So you got to start thinking about life after. Certainly, we always talk about Jason Kelce, but also Lane Johnson.
Which brings up an interesting topic to me, right? So we're talking about the draft and what they're doing in the draft and why they didn't do stuff in free agency. So I was astonished that last year and this year, they didn't address the quarterback position, not because Jalen Hurts has limitations necessarily. I think he's a fine backup quarterback, but because Lane Johnson's old, Fletcher Cox is old, Darius Slay is old. At the time, the tight end going into the season, Zach Ertz was old. Jason Kelce is ancient. So you're paying these guys a lot of money. You're paying 5 guys, something like 50% of your salary cap or something like that. And any of them could be done tomorrow. So either let them go or give them a quarterback. I honestly believe now that last year and this year, the plan was and is whatever we get out of whoever this year, we get. We get to the playoffs, great. If not, if we do, we do. If we don't, we don't. To quote Andy McPhail. However, our strategy has to be cannot hinge on paying Jason Kelce, Fletcher Cox, Darius Slay, at the time Zach Ertz, and Lane Johnson lots of money as 30-somethings and wasting a year because we have to actually start thinking about replacing those guys, and we get from them whatever we get, quarterback, and the quarterback's irrelevant. That to me was astonishing last year. It's more astonishing this year now that you've got a star in DeVonta Smith, and I think probably the best offensive player is Dallas Goedert, their tight end, who got paid and will be here for a long time. So it's been interesting to me to watch their strategies unfold, and that's the reason if you thought you had to win immediately, you would go with players in this draft who would help you win immediately. For example, there's a linebacker, Nakobe Dean. Right. So if you had to win now, okay, you would add a Nakobe Dean. If you don't, you would find one. You'd draft one in the second or third round and develop them. And I think that's kind of where they are. So that whole liturgy, that whole soliloquy, to my surprise, I think that they are taking two NFL seasons of Jeffrey Lurie's, progressing, lifespan to completely retool the team, ignoring the people who got them to the Super Bowl who still have tread on their tires.
All right, let me play into your theory that they've got some very good veteran guys on the back nine for sure, making good money. We need to strike while these guys are still viable. And I think your theory holds some water. But it assumes the Eagles could have gotten a different quarterback, which is a bit of a stretch because Deshaun Watson said he didn't want to come here, didn't want to compete with it, didn't want to knock his buddy Jalen Hurts from the perch he was on. Russell Wilson didn't want to come to the east coast of the country. Denver was as far east as he was going to go. Take those things out of play. That if the Eagles had been able to pay the tax, whatever it is, pay the player more, give Deshaun Watson even more guaranteed money that Cleveland did, which has the whole NFL up in arms. But if the Eagles had gone even further, maybe they could have talked Deshaun Watson into coming here. Which was the guy? Who was the guy they should have gone to unbelievable links end to get as their quarterback over the last couple of years?
You mean with Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson in play?
Anybody who changed teams.
Russell Wilson.
Yes.
It's a no-brainer. I mean, Russell Wilson, I think I wrote a column about this a few months ago when he was, when people were trying to get him. Russell Wilson was unbelievably good last year. I think he was the fourth highest rated passer last year with a broken thumb. And the year before that, he had 40 touchdowns. He's the only games he's missed are the ones he missed while his thumb healed enough so he could come back. And he's a running quarterback. He's a mobile quarterback who gains yards, but he never gets hit. He's the smartest quarterback I've seen, and with the entire package, since Steve Young. That's the guy he reminds me of constantly. And if you look at Steve Young's track record, and this was back when you could hit quarterbacks, Steve Young went to the Pro Bowl 4 times after he turned 33. So for me, it was Russell Wilson or bust. Deshaun Watson, exclusive of his issues, of his lingering sexual assault accusations and lawsuits, he probably isn't within 2 years of being as effective as Russell Wilson. So if I'm ready to win now, Russell Wilson's the guy I want because he's won. He's been hindered by a guy that I always thought was kind of a fraud as a head coach. And when when the Legion of Boom evaporated, when it disintegrated, so did Pete Carroll's genius. So, I mean, I've always thought Russell Wilson, we're very lucky to be watching Aaron Rodgers. We're also very, very lucky to be watching Russell Wilson. It's kind of like when Isaiah Thomas and Michael Jordan were in the league at the same time.
Yeah, and the Eagles can't stop talking. In a lot of ways, Russell Wilson is their white whale because they can't stop talking about how close they were getting to him. They could have taken him in the second round if they wanted him that badly. They could have taken him in the first round, looked like geniuses if they wanted him that badly. So the Eagles tend to do that. They did it. Remember, they did it with Odell Beckham Jr. Chip came and said, "Oh, we had him as the best player in the draft." Now it's DK Metcalf. We had him as a top 15 player, but he was a medical red flag. Now, he was a medical red flag, but I don't know if they had him as a top 15 player. They love to,
You know who else was a medical red flag? Sidney Jones.
Yeah. Well, he should have been.
Whenever they talk that mess about medical red flag in reference to DK Metcalf, I'm like, you have twice taken guys who, when you drafted them, they were in wheelchairs. Okay. So don't give me the stuff about DK Metcalf's, stiff neck. It's ridiculous. Medical red flag.
But what you said was interesting to me about before about the wide receiver market, Marcus, because I agree with you. I think they didn't see this coming. I don't think a lot of people saw this coming. And the Eagles are in it. But one of the things, and Jody told you, I call them a disciplined organization. And for the most part, they are. But, I mean, that's the cost of doing business at that position. At some point, do you have to change and say, in other words, does discipline become a negative trait at some point? I mean, if that's the cost of doing business, you either get in the business or you don't.
Well, here's the thing, and I agree with them so far. I shouldn't say so far. The market's over. The market's done. I agree with them that I believe these wide receiver acquisitions and signings are horrible values, right on down the line, just bad values. And I believe that you can get, not this year, but over the next 4 years, similar production from first and second round picks. I will say this, though. They're almost never wrong about the market. Not only that, they're usually ahead of the market. They're usually making deals and saving 15, 20% on these deals for themselves. Very, very team-friendly deals. This is the first time in my memory that, and let's be honest, they understood what the quarterback market was going to be and nailed it. They stayed away from the quarterback. They stayed away from, and we're not even talking about to Jody's point, we're not talking about the guy's preferences. They're, no trade clauses, and I'm not going here, and I don't like this, and I'm interviewing teams who want to trade for me, which is crazy. How does Deshaun Watson pull that off? So
no trade clause. That's how he pulled it off.
But they were just wrong about the receiver market. They're dead right about the quarterback market. But they were wrong about the receiver market. And I can't remember them ever being this wrong about any business matter. Not, they've made bad draft picks, but any business matter predicting where the floor for the market was going to be and where the ceiling was going to be. I think they were just astounded. But I don't know anybody who's covered football for more than a week who wasn't astounded. It's just unprecedented that Chris Kirk got that kind of money.
Yeah.
Marcus,
but you said it was over real quick, just to follow up. Sorry, Jody.
Yeah.
It's not over. A.J. Brown wants money now because there's this domino effect. DK Metcalf wants money. Deebo Samuel wants money. And they're all eligible for extensions. And we saw how quickly it happened in Kansas City. Kansas City thought they were going to re-sign Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
Devontae Adams went. The contract blows up, and Tyreek's like, wait a minute. And all of a sudden, he's in Miami in 48 hours. That's how quickly it could happen. I bring up Deebo, especially because I love him as a player. I just think he's the most fun player to watch. And I'd love to see him in Philadelphia. It's not going to happen. But, if he creates enough waves and they get to that point and say, we're going to trade him, that's my point with the Eagles. Are you ever getting in on these types of players, or is it just not worth it because the value's not there?
Well, the only player for my money who really the only receiver that moved this year for my money, considering his age, production, and what he would be able to do with a really, a good quarterback who has a good offensive line. That's the other thing about Russell Wilson. His offensive lines have been horrible, and he's still Russell Wilson. But if you put Russell Wilson behind this offensive line, or if you put DK Metcalf on the field and give your quarterback 3.5 seconds, it's over. He's uncoverable. He's a home run hitter who's a tight end. So that's the guy for me that this market was made for. I said that to say I'm astounded he's not somewhere else right now. I mean, to your point, yeah, there are guys who want to move, but it seems as though that's just not going to happen. Maybe it happens draft night. I don't know. But that's a lot of moving parts to have happen on draft night, to draft a guy and have a pre-negotiated contract. Maybe they're doing that right now. For all we know, they're not just figuring out whether, Kenny Pickett's hands are big enough. They're also, they're also doing some backdoor deals.
Marcus, last one from me. And by the way, I got a text from Pete Carroll. He said, "Don't wait for the Christmas card." But
he and Mike McCarthy have stolen so much money over the last 7 or 8 years. It's just obscene. They should be on the run.
All right, I'm a bigger fan of Pete Carroll than you, but that's okay. But I do appreciate your strong opinion on coaches. So I need your opinion on Nick Sirianni. He came in here last year. No one really knew who he was. He wasn't one of the quote-unquote hot candidates, and the Eagles tabbed him. He had the season he had. He got the Eagles into the playoffs in a transitional year. His resume for 1 year in the books looks pretty good to me. How much command does he have of that room? Are the guys like, hey, Nick's our guy, and he's going to be an NFL coach for 10 years? Or is it, hey, good job, maybe a little luck involved there. We beat a bunch of backup quarterbacks last year, but good on you, Nick. What is his status as the guy driving the Eagle locker room going into his second year coaching in the league?
I would give you a story that has nothing to do with the question you asked, but we'll get back.
You'll circle around to it. I got faith in you, Mark.
It's a cyclical thing. We know.
So my second or third year covering the Phillies, I guess it was my second year, Larry Bohm was very unpopular in the clubhouse. Popular with the fans, but unpopular with the clubhouse. And I was at a nightclub at spring training with two of my coworkers, and one of the players one of the Phillies players was there. Well, more than one, but one of them called me over and said, "Hey, listen, you're not wrong about Larry, but look, if the clubhouse isn't good, we don't have a chance to win. And the way you cover us affects how the clubhouse is and the perception, but more importantly, it affects Larry. So it makes Larry kind of worse. He gets upset with you saying these things, which are true, but if you could de-emphasize it, if you could, understand that it's not going to change, then it might give us, a 1% boost in our chances to win down the road." So that player understood that everybody kind of needed to be rowing in the same direction. That's what happened with Jason Kelce after the Flower Power speech. The most significant moment of 2021 for the Eagles was when Jason Kelce broke up. I think it might have been in Detroit. When Jason Kelce broke up the locker room with 1, 2, 3 Roots. I don't know if you guys saw that.
Yeah.
That endorsed Nick Sirianni. Jason Kelce's the most important person in the locker room now that Malcolm Jenkins is gone. And he endorsed Nick Sirianni in all his earnestness and silliness and, quirkiness.
Quirky, yes.
So to answer your question, we're not having this conversation if that doesn't happen, because the team doesn't go on to be better and buy into what Sirianni was selling. And to Sirianni's credit, he was flexible. He abandoned his initial offense and made it a run-first offense. And by doing so, again, the most important people on that team are the offensive linemen. In doing so, he delighted the offensive linemen. He delighted Jason Kelsey. He delighted Lane Johnson. And you got an even bigger buy-in. I was surprised that he was that flexible. I was surprised he learned so much so quickly. And I think he has a pretty high ceiling as a coach. And I think you're going to see him pull back on the quirkiness and the hyperbole and the snow jobs, because players understand, they're smart. They watch press conferences. They understand, what a snow job is. And he stopped doing it. So I think that aspect of his coaching evolved. I think he understood what his quarterback and what his receivers could and couldn't do. So that evolved. And I think John will agree, like a lot of coaches getting their first head job and having the final say, you go into it with a template or a paint by number, and you expect everybody to stay within the lines. But that's not the way athletics is. You have to divine the capabilities of your players and your coaches and be able to change the template, sometimes series to series, but certainly overarchingly. So to answer your question, I think he's got a pretty high ceiling, and I think he's got staying power. And he did enough last year. So if he gets fired this year, he'll get another head coaching job.
Oh, yeah. He's not getting. He did it. He did a heck of a job. I would argue he was the best rookie head coach, and I think Marcus is right. He shows
bar.
It was a low bar, but he shows it was a low bar, but he shows a high ceiling. I think you're right as a head coach. Still has a way to go. And I'll wrap it up here with you, Marcus, because he called us Inquirer.com. Read him there at InkstainRetch, R-E-T, not W-R, on Twitter. We are football nerds. We'll take that hit. But I do want to get your thoughts on three things. I know you wrote about one of them. Clayton Kershaw, number one, Alec Bohm, and Matisse Thybulle.
Now, are you talking about taking Kershaw out?
Yes.
Yeah,
perfect game. There's been 23 perfect games in the history of Major League Baseball. Jody, I think that's correct. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Sounds about right.
82 pitches, I think he was at. Out. Does that hurt the game of baseball?
If we had a normal spring training, yes, but no. I mean, I'm astonished he threw 82 pitches. Nobody should be throwing probably more than 75 or 80 pitches right now because they just didn't stretch out. And you can argue it shouldn't be this way, but it's been this way for 20 years. Guys are built up a certain way and monitored throughout the season. There might be a point this season where Clayton Kershaw throws 80 pitches again because he threw 112 the time before, and no matter what, he's not going 85 because he didn't sleep properly the night before. His biometrics are off. That's just the world we live in. So and I'm not a huge proponent of coddling pitchers. The Steven Strasburg getting shut down during the middle of a playoff run by the Washington Nationals. I thought that was absurd. But when that was allowed to happen, it was over. So, yeah, optimally, you let Kershaw stay in and try to finish that game. But especially with a shortened spring training. And what we're finding right now with these pitchers and their pitch counts is who did their work in the offseason. Because the Phillies have at least two guys who could probably go 90 pitches in their debuts. But they also have a bunch of guys who probably shouldn't go 50 and probably 75 in their second game because they weren't ready. And that, to me, I understand they were locked out or whatever, but some guys were ready. And so that's how I feel about Kershaw. As far as Alec Bohm goes, I don't buy him. I don't think he's sorry he said what he said. I think he's sorry he got caught saying, I hate this bleeping place. I bleeping hate this place. I think he's sorry that, the technology exists to out him. I think he does bleeping hate this place. That's the vibe I got from him all spring training when I was down there. And let's be honest, he's a 25-year-old kid who got sent to AAA last year after a great rookie year, and then they groomed another prospect to take his job. Right? The biggest story of spring training was Bryson Stott unseated Alec Bohm at third base. He's the starting third baseman. Alec Bohm is a backup player now. And when the rosters contract, he might be a starter in AAA again. The rosters will contract at the end of April, I believe, or end of May. I'm not sure. So, he did a great job at the behest of Kyle Schwarber and Nick Castellanos. But listen, I'm really sorry I said it was at his locker right after the game. I'm sorry I said what I said. People bought it hook, line, and sinker, gave him a standing ovation the next night when he was introduced as a pinch hitter. And, great. But, let's see when his on-base percentage is 300 as opposed to 666, how forgiving the people are, how many standing ovation he gets. And as far as Matisse Thybulle, I don't really care. Well, for one thing, if you're going to get the first vaccine in a 2-vaccine series, at that point, you've already jumped in the water over your waist,
right?
So get the second vaccine and be done with it. Number one, that just like I had to read that like 5 times. Like I was like, okay, so he got the J&J vaccine and not the booster, or because this is insanity, right? So he gets the first vaccine, and then as variants emerge, we realize that the vaccine isn't as effective at keeping people from spreading COVID with the variants as it was with the original virus. So at that point, he says it's still effective, more effective than not getting it.
Right.
At that point, he says, well, that's my bar. It needs to be just as effective. I only ever got it so I wouldn't give it to somebody else. And now that I'm more likely to give it to somebody else, I'm not going to. So there's no logic there. Number one. Number two, I don't care if you're pro or anti-vaccine. There are lots of vaccines I've gotten I didn't want to get, but I had to get them to do my job. This vaccine will keep him from doing his job for 3 of the 7 games if it goes 7 games in Toronto. At that point, the conversation's over. At that point, you're a bad teammate. That's just it. You're telling your team, I'm more important than you are. This vaccine, which has virtually no side effects for anybody, certainly has no greater side effects than some other vaccines that you've probably already gotten and that we all get all the time. Keeps you do your job.
Yeah.
You're abandoning your team, and you're not this 8th player anymore. You're a starter. They kept you on the team in the Ben Simmons trade. They didn't trade you, and this is how you repay them. The Sixers are. I will say this. I've been around a lot of coaches and a lot of managers who've had a lot of guys not vaccinated. I haven't seen anybody as angry as Doc Rivers. He came out and told us 2 days ago, I encouraged him. I pleaded with him, and he wouldn't do it. So now I have to support it, which isn't very supportive. Those are not the most supportive words to say.
No.
But yeah, this is a big, big deal. It's astounding, and I say this to people all the time. You work in Philadelphia. They say, yeah, you work in Philadelphia. What's it like being a sports writer in Philadelphia? I say it's like harvesting fruit in Mexico. It's just bountiful. We got Alec Bohm and Matisse Thybulle in the same news cycle.
Yeah.
And they're not even the biggest stories,
We got to wrap this up here, but just a quick retort. I will defend Alex Bohm in this way. Pick any of the other 29 cities in Major League Baseball. If the situation was the same, he would have said the same exact thing. I don't think it was a Philly thing. I think it was the situation which he has a lot of his own doing to have put himself in that situation. In his mind, sucks. Okay, fine. Yeah, you're not happy about it. Well, you wouldn't be happy in Cincinnati or L.A. or Houston, whatever. Some people try to make it a Philly thing. It's not a Philly thing. It's an Alec Bohm thing.
I think New York would be. I think it would be similar in New York and Boston. But most of the cities watching baseball these days, Jody, they wouldn't care enough to jeer him.
We'll agree to disagree there. And the thing about Doc is, talk about having to suck it up and take one for the team and defend a player he's really ticked at. Why didn't you show that to Paul Reed? The kid goes out, gets 25 points, has his best game ever, and he says, we're not going to start the Paul Reed party. Talk about throwing one of your guys under the bus.
In Doc's defense,
deserve to do that to get that kind of response.
In Doc's defense, Paul Reed averages 9 fouls per 36 minutes.
But,
Okay, and the
but what's better, Paul Reed
and-
fouling a guy and making him go to the line and earn his points, or Andre Jordan standing there and watching the guy dunk on him? The foul is not a bad play.
Yeah, fouling is a bad play. Yes, because it stops the clock, it gives them 2 points, and it puts the other team in the bonus. Paul Reed has played well against backup centers. The guy that he cooked in Detroit that night didn't play in the other game in Detroit. He was out with an ankle sprain. So, yeah, he had a great game, but Doc didn't come out and say, hey, I'm going to run over Paul Reed. What he said was, stop asking me Paul Reed questions that I've answered and will answer again. And his reasoning was Paul Reed fouls too much. Literally, he's averaged in the 8 games he's played the most over the last five or 6 months, or I'm sorry, 3 months. In the 8 games he's played the most, which is more than 10 minutes, he's averaged 3.65 fouls in 13 minutes.
Yeah. Now I'm not at the Sixers anymore. Haven't been for a number of years, but I will say, watching from afar, Marcus, what I feel bad for Doc is, and he gets too testy with the media sometimes, but I feel bad. He's always defending somebody he doesn't want to defend. The poor guy. I mean, he's like, I feel like, and you're there, so I feel like he takes people off to the side and says, Ben's a what, and I don't want to defend this guy.
Well, you're right.
He doesn't want to defend Matisse Thybulle, but
yeah,
he
you're
has
right.
to.
But this has been constant since they traded for Andrew Bynum. This goes to the top. This is what Josh Harris has created in the Philadelphia 76ers umbrella or culture. It's let's pretend there's not a problem. Let's placate everyone that we don't want to not even offend, but evaluate. And it's been true with Joel. It was true with Ben. It was true with Markelle Fultz. You just go down the line. These guys could do no wrong. It's the emperor has no clothes. And you're just sitting there in front of them saying, I either feel sorry for you or you disgust me because, you feel like you can't not lie or you're willfully lying. I was the guy that got jumped before Game 7 of the playoff series last year against the Hawks for suggesting that Tyrese Maxey start that game either in place of or alongside Ben. Maybe you sit Seth Curry. Danny Green was hurt. And Doc, you don't know basketball, you don't know this, you don't know that. So that was the last game of the season. A week later, Doc issued an edict. He had all the same guys coming back. Doc issued an edict to his assistant coaches. We have to find a way to make Tyrese Maxey a starter in this lineup.
Well, Marcus, if you got that ball rolling, we'll say thank you very much.
Tyrese has been pretty good. Huh?
And we'll also say thank you very much for hopping on with us today. Always a pleasure, bud. Appreciate you mixing it up with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Mike.
And not afraid to give you his opinion.
No, I love Marcus gives his opinion. That's great. So we went long, but I had because I knew, well, he wrote a great column on Matisse, so I knew he had a great take on that. But I wanted to get his Kershaw, because Kershaw bothers me. That bothers me, Jody. I got in a wormhole. You're a baseball guy. I know we got to get the break because we got Rob coming up. Nolan Ryan once threw 235 pitches in a 13-inning game, pitched 3 days later on 3 days rest, won the game. And oh, by the way, I don't know, he pitched 2 decades. More than 2 decades, Joe.
I could spend the next 35 minutes telling you Nolan Ryan stories from back in the day. Unfortunately, John, we're not back in the day.
Yeah, we're not going back. 230. No. I thought it was a misprint. Because I'm like, what? No, it was real. 235 pitches, struck out 19 batters.
Those days are long gone, and they're not coming back.
Yeah.
But we are coming back. We got to take a quickie timeout, come back. You got Mac on Birds 365.
Imagine for a moment that you went to work today and when you came home, you were catastrophically injured. Your life and your family's life. That's what happened to union construction worker Mike Little.
I was scared of what the end was going to be, but to be 100% honest with you, I knew I was going to be all right just by talking with Brian. In my heart, I just knew everything was going to be all right.
Call the firm and find out why they say, "We got this." Call 215-458-2222.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass. Free.
What's that?
A rocks glass?
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that.
Holy shit.
And you're telling me I can get one of these glasses for free?
That's right. One free rocks glass per customer with each first-time purchase of Stateside Vodka. So good, it just disappears.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Go for the midnight dares. Go for the memories. Go for the view that goes on forever. Go for the bubbles in your bathtub and in your drink. Go to bed whenever you want. Or don't. Go for him. Go for her. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Appreciate you streaming in here on Birds 365 on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel, where Johnny Mackley asked them to
like, share, and subscribe.
We could use your help. We appreciate your fandom. We appreciate you being an individual who joins us from time to time. Join us more often. And when you're here, do the right thing by your boys. Even though some people will probably say, not after Marcus says, I'm sorry, I like Marcus.
I love Marcus.
I disagree with him a lot, but it's fun to disagree with him and get into it. And we did that with Marcus, which is why we have Marcus on.
Always. I like opinionated people who aren't afraid to give their opinion, because too many people are afraid these days. But yeah, so I got into some non-Eagle stuff, but it's fun every once in a while. You got to throw that in there. Chris Olave visiting today. There's your Eagle stuff. Chris Olave.
Ooh, that's a good name to know that they're bringing in. But I want to get a football point in, potentially Eagle related, because it was something we talked about with Marcus. No, you and I have talked about this before, and others have. This is not breaking news, but people have postulated the churn of quarterback in the National Football League, that the price of playing poker at the quarterback position, and it's not just the hard number of 50 million plus, it's even more important, the percentage of the salary cap you're going to dedicate to the quarterback position just continues to go up and up and up and up and up. And some have said maybe the better way to do it is you draft a quarterback for 5 years, and then when the 5th year comes, you say, okay, see you later, bye, and you just draft another quarterback. And you go back down that road.
I've been in that camp. I think that might be the way to go, but I forget who brought it up. I think it was Ben Solak. So if it wasn't, I apologize. But, you know, he did bring up a good point that, and I kind of said this with Marcus a little bit earlier, we just assume Jalen Hurts is good with it because he's proven to be good with it at this point. And I'm at the point where I'm going to start to say, well, that doesn't mean he's always going to be good with it. But from a larger standpoint, if you take that college model, what are the odds that you're going to get a Jalen Hurts type, a Jalen Hurts type, a Jalen Hurts type all in a row versus the Carson Wentz type personality or the Baker Mayfield type personality, which is what I brought up with Marcus,
right? Who's,
you know, out there saying he got no respect from the Browns and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's how That's more likely than getting a Jalen Hurts who just keeps his head down and goes to work and pretends he doesn't hear all the rumors, which he hears. It's unlikely you're going to get another Jalen Hurts as you continue to flip this thing over.
Here's where I'll agree with the potential thought process, but flip it positionally a little bit. Not the quarterback, because I do think there's a build-up time. You got to go through startup costs, as your buddy, the former defense coordinator, used to describe it. Oh, yeah, you got to do that at the quarterback position as well. So it's not really a 5-year period. It's more a 4-year period. How about that becomes the way of doing business at the wide receiver position?
It's going to have to, because the Eagles aren't getting involved, man.
We've talked about the blow up of the wide receiver. You think the quarterback money has gone up, the wide receiver money has gone up faster and quicker and a bigger percentage than even the quarterback position. Maybe that's how you handle wideout. That you draft the guy, you keep him for 5 years, you say thank you very much, let him go sign his $25, $30 million deal with somebody else, and you draft the next stud wide receiver with your first round pick the year.
In a lot of ways, that's already what teams are doing at running back right now. Rarely do you get to a second contract, and when you do, it seems like those teams are always haranguing about it and upset about it, like the Cowboys and Ezekiel Elliott. So yeah, and I'm with the Eagles on this one, because I don't think any receiver is worth it for this reason, Jody, and I say it all the time. I'm not dismissing DeVonta Adams. I think he's a phenomenal player. Tyreek Hill, tremendous. Stephon Diggs, I love him. All these are great players, but they're dependent on quarterbacks to get them to the football. I'm certain Tyreek Hill isn't going to be happy in Miami. Maybe he's happy off the field. On the field, he's not going to be happy. DeVonta Adams, Derek Carr, I think, is capable of doing some things, but it's not going to be like it was in Green Bay. So we'll see how that shakes out. Those two are very close off the field. Buffalo's in a little bit of a better situation because they already have it. They have the quarterback and the receiver. So I think that'll be fine. But, let's say the Eagles trade for A.J. Brown or TK Metcalf or Deebo Samuel, and they give him the extension and they give him $25 million. They don't have that. They don't have that vehicle to get them the football consistently right now. So I'm with the Eagles. I'm going, and it's a shift. They're going to play this up like if they draft. They had Jamie. What did I tell you about top 30 visits yesterday, Jody? I said pay attention to the positions, not necessarily the players.
Right.
The cluster of positions. Jameson Williams is in. Chris Olave's in now. Pickens from Georgia is in. Over the past 3 days, they've had 3 receivers. This is the way they're going. It's not the way they wanted to go. They wanted a more veteran presence, but this is the way they have to go. And maybe it works out in the end. Maybe it's better to be lucky than good.
And I don't think that's an unreasonable way to do your positional breakout for a decade, because we always thought, the only thing that matters is 2 weeks from now, day 1 of the NFL draft. Well, the Eagles already showed you they've got more of an eye on the future than some other teams by doing a deal that they did with the Saints. Jeff Lurie came out, one of the very few times we get to hear from Jeff Lurie. It says we need to worry about the present and the future. So they tip their hand as to their line of thinking. The turnover the wide receiver position every 4 or 5 years is not an outrageous way of doing things. I think it's actually more applicable than the quarterback position, because I think you need to invest some time in a quarterback to start, which makes the turnaround cost even that much more on the back end. I would not be surprised if the Eagles go exactly the way we're talking about here. All right, McMullen and McDonald taking a quickie timeout. Our bud, Rob Marty, hasn't been with us in about a month. I always check my text when Marty hasn't been on a month. Damn, we got to get him back on. So we're going to do just that. Former Philly guy living down in Florida these days. Don't kid yourself. He still knows plenty of Eagles. Rob Marty from the Associated Press going to be with us next on Birds 365.
Imagine for a moment that you went to work today and when you came home, you were catastrophically injured. Your life and your family's life. That's what happened to union construction worker Mike Little.
I was scared of what the end was going to be, but to be 100% honest with you, I knew I was going to be all right just by talking with Brian. In my heart, I just knew everything was going to be all right.
Call the firm and find out why they say, "We got this." Call 215-458-2222.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass. Free.
What's that?
A rocks glass?
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that.
Holy shit.
And you're telling me I can get one of these glasses for free?
That's right. One free rocks glass per customer with each first-time purchase of Stateside Vodka. So good, it just disappears.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Go for the midnight dares. Go for the memories. Go for the view that goes on forever. Go for the bubbles in your bathtub and in your drink. Go to bed whenever you want. Or don't. Go for him. Go for her. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
John McMullen and Jody McDonald here with you on Birds 365. We're lucky enough to get one of our favorite guests up on this Thursday edition. Philly guy who's kind of relocated to South Florida, but damn if he doesn't show up at the Eagles all the time. Anyway, get on that plane, come back here and do some Eagle stuff. Our buddy Rob Motti, who, as I say, is a Florida guy. So I'm going to start there with you, Rob, because I know you're only a hop, skip, and a jump from the Bucs, so you got a good feel on them. I threw this question by a couple of NFL guys that I've had either here with us on Birds 365 or on my national CBS show. 0 to 100%. 0 meaning, what are you even talking about, Jody? 100% being, oh, yeah, I'm damn sure. What percentage did Tom Brady have in Bruce Arians becoming the ex-head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
Jody, I'll say 100%, but not from the perspective or the angle that most are thinking or feeling. But Bruce Arians himself said, right? He said the fact that Brady was coming back allowed him to move on and feel that he's turning the team over in a position where Todd Bowles can win a Super Bowl. So from that respect, yes, Tom Brady.
All right. You're spinning it on me. No, I wanted did Brady go in and tell Leona,
well, let me go
man out or I'm not coming back.
All right,
go ahead, John.
Let me go in this direction with you, Rob, because I'm not a conspiracy theorist guy. But there's this story going around the NFL that the two Michigan men, Stephen Ross and Tom Brady, had this backdoor plan of Bo retirement, and he's going to buy part of the Miami Dolphins. There's a lot of moving parts to this conspiracy. And they were going to backdoor it that way. Tom was going to play in Miami. And one of the reasons Tom was going to go to Miami is because things weren't, great with Bruce. What is your take on the whole conspiracy that this was the original plan from Tom Brady when he decided to say, I'm going to walk away?
I don't dismiss it entirely. I feel like the reporting there has been done. Ben Volan's one of those reporters who obviously is very well connected, has a history with Brady and his people in New England. And Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk has done a lot of reporting on this. So I don't think that's something that should be dismissed. I feel like there were some inklings, there were some signs towards the end of last year that maybe things weren't exactly as cool as people may have wanted it to be. After the final game, when they lost to the Rams in the playoffs, Levante David, I believe it was either Levante David or Devin White, one of the linebackers, I forget which one, alluded to some issues within the locker room. But when pressed on it the following day, he kind of downplayed it because his comments were taken as, what was going on there? Was it Brady and the Arians? What was happening? Now, some also interpreted that as, well, it was the whole Antonio Brown situation. That was an issue within the locker room. Maybe some players did not feel that was handled the way it should have been handled. It could have been handled better. Maybe if it was a different coach who wasn't as fiery, who wasn't in the way Bruce Arians decided to kick him off. Maybe that was part of it. I don't know that Tom necessarily, although he never said anything negative about it, I don't think he could not have been happy with that situation for sure. So there's the conspiracy theory is one that I think there may be something to it. Now, Brady's under contract this year with the Buccaneers. Tua Tagovailoa is the quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. There would have had to have been a trade. He couldn't have just walked away, unretired, and come back to Miami. So there's a lot of pieces and elements to this. And the Bucs had made it clear. Arians had said, we're not giving him away. We're not trading him. It's just bad business. So there's a lot to it that I don't know how it could have been pulled off. Could it happen for next year where he's playing at age 46? Yeah, if he doesn't restructure and get a contract and he's one and done and he's ready, wants to come back, potentially. But what if Tua develops with all the weapons that he has? What if he actually develops into, and we saw towards the end of last year where he may not have been a elite type Pro Bowl quarterback, but towards the end of last year, he put together some solid starts and some excellent games. I think he had consecutive games of 80% plus completions, and that was a step in the right direction. So there's a lot that has to go down. Do I think that Tom Brady could end up in an ownership position in Miami at some point? Yes, I think that could happen.
Yeah, well, then I was going to say I disagree with Florio. Now I disagree with Marty. He might not get the chance to get ownership in Miami because Stephen Ross might not be owning it. Unless Stephen Ross, he's doing the partial ownership thing with somebody else other than the guy who's in place right now. And the whole Florio thing, he gets no credit for Brady because he basically had him in a San Francisco 49er uniform. That didn't happen. Sorry, Mike. But we're up on a Brady tangent. Let me suck you back into the Eagles here, Mr. Marty. I just asked this question of Marcus Hayes, and Marcus is there every day. You're there often enough to have an opinion on this. Year 2, Nick Sirianni comes in as an understood head coach, wasn't a hot commodity. They give him the job. He has the year that he has, gets the Eagles into the playoffs. He has his way of doing things a little different than any Eagle coach who came before him. How solidified is he in that locker room? Is he the man? Do they just accept what he says and his motivation factors because of the first season he had? Is he still in a growing mode? Pardon my roots attempt at humor here. But where does he sit right now as the guy in charge, year 2, head coach, Philadelphia Eagles?
I think pretty solid ground because he came in as rookie head coach and led this team to the playoffs despite some rough patches. And although they beat a whole bunch of teams that had losing records, they didn't beat any teams with winning records, and they got disposed of by Brady and the Bucs in the playoffs. That's quite an accomplishment for a first-year head coach in a rebuilding program coming off a 4-11-1 season. I think they're a relatively young team. We know that. They're a young team with a lot of guys who don't have much experience with other head coaches. So Nick Sirianni is their guy. He's the one who led them to out of the basement that they were in and into the postseason. And I think he's a guy that players can relate to. He's a player-friendly coach, and he's someone who, although he's not a strict, tough disciplinarian, not of the Parcells, Belichick, Tom Coughlin mode, I think guys really they respect him, and he's someone who is, although still growing, can command that locker room. So I think he's on pretty solid ground going into year 2. And they're in a position now where they got to continue to figure out how to get better in a conference, and that although there's a lot of players we saw how the AFC West got better, we saw other teams get better. The Eagles haven't done much this offseason. They got to figure out how they can be a contender when other teams have gotten better and they've kind of been like, sitting right there.
Well, one of the ways they're going to get better is the draft, obviously, Rob. And we're in top 30 visit season. And Chris Olave, the latest reported visit to the Eagles. Now, I was texting with a GM earlier this week, a former GM, and I was asking about top 30 visits, and he said, pay attention to the positions more than the names because it indicates you're kind of targeting. Well, the Eagles have brought in Olave. Jamison Williams was yesterday. George Pickens from Georgia, more of a second-round pick, but still was in earlier in the week. It's a clear indication, annual tradition now here in Philadelphia. Eagles are going receiver near the top of the draft. How surprised were you when talking to people around the league, the explosion of the wide receiver salary market? Did that take people by surprise? Because it seems like it took the Eagles by surprise.
Yeah, I think so. And I had talked to a lot of agents who represent some of the better tight ends and last year and a little bit into this year. And everyone's waiting for tight ends to get paid the way wide receivers get paid, specifically when Amari Cooper got that contract and obviously the Cowboys traded him. There was some thought like, hey, this guy's already overpaid. And now they're getting even bigger and blowing away Amari Cooper's contract. And I'm waiting for tight ends to catch up because they have such a dual role and are as important, sometimes even more important to an offense when you're talking about guys like Kelsey and Kittle, and to some degree when Ertz was having career type numbers and awesome years. So there's been, I think, a lot of people surprised by what's happening with what the wide receivers getting all this ridiculous amount of money. And now we saw that with some of the quarterbacks. They're getting, Patrick Mahomes got insane dollars. Aaron Rodgers getting a ton of money, and all of a sudden they can't afford Devontae Adams. So if you're going to invest that much into your wide receivers and into your quarterbacks, and I know it's not going to be as many wide receivers who get that kind of money as quarterbacks who get that kind of money, because there just aren't that many. The QB position is what it is. You got to pay the guy who's going to be behind center. But it's going to put teams in a difficult position with the salary cap. If you start throwing all of the Tyreek Hill type money, Devontae Adams type money, whatever Deebo Samuel's going to end up getting, that's going to be potentially he may deserve more than anyone because of the way his versatility and how he plays. Like, as the Eagles are looking at and thinking about wide receiver, I'd love to see them bring in a guy like Treylon Burks who could be that Deebo Samuel type player, who's a versatile guy who you can hand the ball to. I think he's going to get really paid, and that's going to be, and I don't know if it's going to be in San Francisco. So that's going to be the next one for sure.
All right, I'm going to beat John to the punch. Yeah, except we don't know if the Eagles can use a Treylon Burks type guy because their bubble screen work with Jalen Reagor hasn't really worked too well to this point. But off on a side note, here's where I want to go with you, Marty. We're 2 weeks from day one or night one of the NFL draft, I should say. Will you be in Vegas? And if you are, God bless. Isn't it the greatest thing to get paid to go to Las Vegas, to do work and be in Las Vegas? But if not, if you're going to be home and just watching it, maybe you're going over the Bucks to talk to those in charge there. If you were going to be home, do you watch ESPN? Do you watch the NFL Network? Do you watch ABC for the personality features? Where is Rob Marty spending his draft time this year?
It's still to be determined whether I'm in Vegas, Tampa, or Philly. So I got 3 options. I got to pick. I got to pick one right now. I think Vegas looks a little bit more intriguing than Philly. Tampa is home, so it's easy to sleep in my own bed after covering a draft. But either way, it's going to be on when we're in the media room or wherever it is. I go NFL Network. I'm just a NFL Network guy, and I'll probably go. I will go that route. I don't even know what's happening on ABC, personality features and all that.
Yeah,
all right, cool. Hopefully,
well, I'm a big DJ guy. So before that, I was a Mike Mayock guy. So I'm with you. I'm an NFL Network guy. But yeah, I mean, if I were you, I would never leave Tampa. So if that helps,
yeah, it'd be an easier decision. So I've coming right up on it now. We're 2 weeks away, so I got to make my plans within a day or so. That's for sure.
And everybody's got to make their plans for draft day. More importantly, the teams themselves. So we look at the Eagles now. We started at 3. They make the trade with New Orleans. They're down to 2. You know, it's interesting. We talked a little bit, Rob, about the exploding wide receiver numbers, and you brought up the quarterbacks. Derek Carr being the latest at $40 million plus. Now, and you know, Andrew Brandt, our buddy, was on saying that was a bad contract considering what Deshaun Watson went. They should have held that for more. I bring this up for this reason, Rob. And Jody knows I've been asking a lot of people this, and you can offer a better perspective than most. Jalen Hurts was a 2nd-round pick in 2020, so he's eligible for an extension after this upcoming season. Now, if he plays like he did this year, Pro Bowl alternate, makes the team, takes the team to the playoffs, what's that worth? In this market, if the Eagles get that at $30 million a year, that would be a bargain, wouldn't
it? If they were, see, that's the big question, because they're positioning themselves right now with that trade and the 2 1s for next year, and the potential that if they wanted to go in a different direction, and I don't know, and clearly they're not convinced on Jalen Hurts yet, and that's understandable, because he's shown enough to leave you wanting to see more, to where you're intrigued, to where you think that this guy's obviously talented. He's got abilities and skills, but he's got areas where he needs to grow and needs to develop and needs to become a guy. I think it's pretty simplistic when we say in these terms, and I hear more and more people using these terms, and I've been using it since the middle of last season at some point. Is he a guy you win because of, or is he a guy you win with? And he's been a guy you win with, and he's got to develop into someone they win because of. So if that doesn't happen this year, he could put up nice numbers. He could make a Pro Bowl, and they could still feel at the end of the year that, you know what, we haven't seen enough from him to where we feel he could be a quarterback that's going to win us a Super Bowl, and they go in a different direction. So I think you could see there are guys who put up good numbers worthy of nice contracts. Kirk Cousins, for one, right? But he hasn't won a thing. Carson Wentz, 27-7 last year. When you look on the surface and you look on those numbers, 27-7, pretty good numbers in even today's NFL. And he gets traded. So there's going to be a lot of outside the numbers trying to look at the development, the growth, how he can handle the offense, how he handles reading the defenses, how he can be a guy who can lead you to deep into the postseason. I think there's a lot of questions still left to be answered about Jalen, and I'm excited to see what he can do and how much he's grown, because you would hope from year 1 to year 2, we saw the growth, year 2 to year 3. There's still a lot of room for Jalen Hurts to improve. If he gets there, though, John, if he does get there, 30 is not a crazy number to think of what he would be worth, a $30 million a year quarterback, which coming out of the draft is a second-round pick who is supposed to be a Taysom Hill. That's pretty good.
I just got a text. It was funny. I got one earlier in the show from Pete Carroll who said, tell Marcus Hayes, don't wait for his Christmas card. I just got one here. Says same exact thing. Don't wait for the Christmas card for Rob Motti and John McMullen from Mel Kiper, as a matter of fact. Don't be waiting by the mailbox for that Christmas card this year.
Great hair, Mel.
All right. Are you ready, Rob Motti, for the return of Derek Barnett and playing 50% of the snaps for the Philadelphia Eagles this year? Because if they're going to use a wide receiver position at number 15, they're bringing them all in. And they haven't brought in a bunch of at least first-round level talent guys at the defensive end position. That's where most of us thought would be the number one. The Eagles have options, but defensive end would be the spot where they try and address if the 5 best are off the board and they don't think they can do the medical, wait on a Jabo thing. They wait till the second round. The guy's off the board. They got to wait till the third round. Are you ready for Derek Barnett taking 50% of the snaps again this year?
It's always him, Jody. It's always DB, right? I'm ready for Derek Barnett. I think that he, as a rotational piece, the value that they were able to bring him in at, I don't hate the move. I think he gives you a little bit more depth, and if it allows them to go in a different direction early in the first round and bring in a wide receiver and add more weapons for Jalen Hurts, I think that's actually beneficial, because I want to get an answer on Jalen, and I want to see him surrounded by as much talent as possible to help develop him and get that answer. So if that's at the expense of having to watch Derek Barnett jump off sides and commit a late penalty at some point, probably at a critical juncture of a game early in the season, whatever it may be. And we're going to always turn and look at Nick Sirianni and see how he responds and reacts. And now that he knows, he's going to say something positive, because that's how Nick is, and he knows his audience. So I'm fine with Derek Barnett.
Yeah, the Eagles are going to spin it like this, Rob, and the fact that, well, defense can help the offense, and they brought in Hassan Reddick and Kaiser White, and they're going to get, in theory, better on the defensive side of the ball. And that's going to help Jalen Hurts with field position. But when we all heard that you got to build up around Jalen Hurts, we were thinking it's more than Zach Pascal, right? Now they're going to get a wide receiver pretty high in the draft. They're going to get a running back, I think, probably day 3, and there'll be some good ones because of the devaluation of that position. But you're right. I mean, how do you evaluate a kid when you have a second-year receiver in DeVonta Smith, a third-year receiver in Quez Watkins, who are very young and still developing themselves? And the Eagles, by their actions, said, well, we went after Calvin Ridley. It didn't work out. Tried to sign Christian Kirk. They got outpriced in the market. Allen Robinson, they got beat by the Super Bowl champions. Robert Woods didn't want to come here. They wanted a veteran receiver, but now they have to shift towards another younger receiver. DeVonta even said, I could use some veteran mentorship. You want DeVonta being mentored, not being the mentee of a new receiver. How does this help Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, and it's certainly Greg Ward isn't that guy who's going to be able to, although help guys in different ways. He hasn't had that success on the field to be the veteran mentor who's been there and accomplished that. He's a guy who's been able to hang on to the roster for many years, and he's the veteran, and now Zach Pascal. I know a lot of people are giving up on Jalen Reagor. As long as he's still on the roster, and that may be something that changes, he could be part of a trade on draft day or whatever it may be. I feel maybe there's a way to, I talked about Treylon Burks as being a guy that you want to, I like to look at, because maybe he could be in a Deebo Samuel type. I know they tried a little bit of it with Jalen Reagor, the bubble screens and things like that didn't work. maybe just pitch the damn ball to Jalen Reagor. Maybe just stick him in the backfield and hand the ball to Jalen Reagor. He's shown that he can be elusive and somewhat of a weapon with the ball in his hands. If he can't get open or can't catch it, literally hand the ball to him. He was a first-round pick. Try and get something out. Hey, they need running back depth. Let's convert without converting Jalen Reagor and saying you're go hang out in the running backs room and watch film with them. Make him into the Deebo Samuel type just to give them some usage out of this guy. And yeah, they're still going to end up bringing in a wide receiver early, but that isn't a veteran guy, like you said. It's not the Calvin Ridley, and it's not anyone, the Allen Robinsons, or anyone who's going to be able to be a mentor for DeVonta Smith. And I think that is important. Now, in this NFL and the way guys are now, people they're hanging out with players on other teams. They're spending their offseason working out together. I think DeVonta Smith can get that mentorship and the advice that he needs from wide receivers not on the Eagles, from guys he looks up to around the league. I think that's available to him. I talked to a lot of players who the NFL just did a mentorship program actually a couple weeks ago, and some of the former players and some of the guys who are still in the league. I spoke to Kelvin Beachum about it. So there's that kind of program. He may not be getting it on a daily basis in the locker room, but he could get it outside. I would have loved to see them make it happen for him, and they didn't. Doesn't mean it won't. There's still the possibility that you can, like the way they've always brought in secondary help later in the summer, the July, the August, the Ronald Darby trade. There's still always a possibility somebody becomes available that's intriguing enough. But if they're going to go wide receiver early in the draft, that's going to decrease that possibility that they go the veteran route.
All right. The reason I'm not cutting some of the young Eagle wide receivers as much slack as it sounds like you guys are, not keeping Jamar Chase from doing what he's doing, not keeping Justin Jefferson from doing what he's doing, or CD Lamb from doing what he's doing. So we've got other receivers around the league who are putting up much gaudier numbers than the Eagles' young receivers. Keep up with the Joneses there, boys. All right, Rob, last thing, because I know you're a football wonk, just like John and myself. Following the draft, you start checking mocks mid-season as to who are the top-ranked guys, and we're following it all the way right up until now, which is 2 weeks before the draft. There's no consensus on anybody, including from the number one pick on down. Any mock you go to, it could be any one of 3 or 4 guys who are the number one pick, and then that affects number 2 and 5 and 6 and so on and so forth down the line. It seems like there are varying opinions this year on these players, and we know where the Eagles sit, and they're not going to get a top 14 player. They're going to get 15 and 19 as of right now. Why do you think that is? Is it just one of those years? Is there misinformation floating out there? The teams are desperately trying to cover up and keep away from other teams information on what they're doing. It seems to me, and I've been doing this junk for a long time, less agreement on the level of players in this year's draft, and yeah, I'm talking about basically the first round, than any year before that. Why do you think that is? Do you even agree with my statement?
No, yeah, I do, because I've seen such a wide consensus of there isn't a consensus, right?
Right.
There's a wide ranging. Even when you look at the quarterbacks, is Kenny Pickett going to be a top 10 guy? Is he going to be a top 15 to 20? Where's he going to be? Who's going to be the top quarterback taken? Who's going to be the top player taken? I think maybe the pandemic played a little bit in this because of the role, the way teams were not able to practice, the way some players did not play, and how 2020 just upended everything, right? That may play a little bit of a role in it. I think there's got to be also somewhat of gamesmanship where you don't, the more information is misinformation, I feel. When you're getting a ton of information, I think that's often teams trying to lead other people to think that they may be interested or they may want somebody. So when you keep things closer to the vest, and I've always thought that's the best way to do it, but the more you hear and the more that's talked about, I think a lot of info turns into misinfo. And then People are just trying to keep what they want to do, who they really like, closer to the vest. And there's going to be a lot of, I think there's going to be still, even though the Eagles and the Saints upended the first round with that blockbuster of a deal, I think there's going to be a lot of wheeling and dealing this year. I think this is a draft where teams may look to move down because there isn't so, you look at a team like the Carolina Panthers who are in need of a quarterback, and with a 6th pick in the draft, they could pretty much probably have anybody they want. Maybe Malik Willis is off the board. I don't know yet who's off the board, or they could have anyone, but they don't have a 2nd or 3rd round pick, and they have a lot of flaws. Maybe they move down and still get their quarterback. So I think there's going to be a lot of wheeling and dealing in this draft, maybe more so than we've seen in years past.
Most important question for last, as always, Rob. Before that, at Rob Motti, you see it there. Follow him on Twitter, the AP Pro Football Podcast. You got faithonthefieldshow.com. You can follow Rob there. So you got T.O. on the podcast. Did you get any driveway workout tips? I know he's 40. He's got to be 48, 40.
Yeah,
is he 50?
He's 48.
Yeah. Fan controlled football. He's trying to get back on the field. How's T.O. doing?
T.O. still, man, he's fun. He's one of the more entertaining guys to talk to. And I thought it was crazy sitting there. He's like, yeah, I spoke to an AFC team. The owner called me last year, told me to stay in shape. I spoke to the GM and I spoke to the coach last year at age 47. And I'm thinking to myself, like, come on, T.O. Like, and then he later says it to someone else in a different interview. He said that he was blowing up Andy Reid's phone, trying to get on the field with them. It wouldn't shock me if T.O. could go out there in as great a shape as he's in, man. He's a freak of nature. If Tom Brady's doing it at age 45, I think T.O. could still run out there and catch 50 balls for 1,000 yards at age 48. He's an incredible physical specimen, and he's just a fun dude to be around. I always thought he was misunderstood, guys. For all of the craziness of T.O., he's never been in trouble. He's never been in any legal trouble that we know of, and he's always kept himself, on that side of the law. And I think, he always brings that up too. He always going to tell you, hey, they said this, that, and that about me. I never got arrested. I never did this. Well, no, kudos to you. You shouldn't be. I hope nobody gets.
That's a low bar, but yeah, kudos.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not a felon. Yeah, way to go, T.O. All right. More importantly, Robbie, and we got to wrap this up. Speaking of freak of nature, what are you curling these days?
No, man. So at one point, I was in the worst shape of my life about 3 weeks ago. I was like, I got to get back in there. I got to do some things. Whole30 diet, just dropped 9 pounds. I could see 2 of the 6-packs. I see 2 of them. I don't think I'll ever get the other 4. I don't think I can ever get there. I like my sweets, but I'm getting there. I got a little shoulder thing situation, little rotator cuff injury. So the most I ever benched was 365, but I'm nowhere near that anymore. Nowhere near it.
I'm doing.
That's pretty good.
12.
I got 225 up once when I was like 21 years old. Right.
The only thing I'm even trying these days are 12-ounce curls.
And
I'll be doing more of them because the girls are away this weekend. So I'm planning on doing a lot of 12-ounce curls here at Shea McDonald. Marty, man, always a pleasure, bud. Your tan's looking good. You're looking pretty cut. Always good to catch up with you, buddy, and we'll do it again after the draft. If you get to Vegas, play red. When in doubt, play red. All right?
You got it. I'll play for you. Thank you, fellas. Have a great week.
Rob Motti, Associated Press, here with us on Birds 365. Yeah, nothing better than getting paid to go to Vegas. I hope Rob weasels his way into that assignment. All right, we got an assignment left. Mac and Mac coming back to put a bow on the show.
Imagine for a moment that you went to work today and when you came home, you were catastrophically injured. Your life and your family's life. That's what happened to union construction worker Mike Little.
I was scared of what the end was going to be, but to be 100% honest with you, I knew I was going to be all right just by talking with Brian. In my heart, I just knew everything was going to be all right.
Call the firm and find out why they say, "We got this." Call 215-458-2222.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass. Free.
What's that?
A rocks glass?
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that.
Holy shit.
And you're telling me I can get one of these glasses for free?
That's right. One free rocks glass per customer with each first-time purchase of Stateside Vodka. So good, it just disappears.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on three. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Go for the midnight dares. Go for the memories. Go for the view that goes on forever. Go for the bubbles in your bathtub and in your drink. Go to bed whenever you want. Or don't. Go for him. Go for her. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Mac coming back to cap another successful Thursday show. Successful because we had two good guests. Thank both Marcus Hayes and Rob Motti for hopping on board. Right before Rob came on, you noticed and put it out there that the Eagles are bringing another wide receiver in their pre-draft visits. Well, they're more than halfway through now. I think they're sneaking up on 20 out of 30 that they've already had, if the reporting is accurate, which I'm sure that it is. Chris Olave, the wide receiver from Ohio State, coming in after Jamison Williams had come in. When's your boy, Treylon Burks, coming in, Johnny Mac? You told us a couple weeks ago you thought he was a guy who fit and the Eagles should have interest in. If they're going heavy wide receiver, at least on the visit end, when is Burks coming in?
Well, I kind of soured on Burks for the Eagles for the reasons I kind of explained with Deebo Samuel type. And Rob brought up that Deebo Samuel, like a lot of people in the NFL say that. And the Eagles said it about Jalen Reagor, not Deebo, was Tyreek Hill like, which is even more laughable. So I always say, I wouldn't want the Eagles to draft Treylon Burks because I don't think they would use him correctly, number one, or they haven't shown me the ability to do that. Maybe it changes with a player who can do it. Maybe Jalen Reagor just can't do it. That's a possibility as well. But as I said with the visits, I said it pretty consistently. It's not the names, it's the positions. Maybe they have all their information locked down on Treylon Burks. I don't know. Maybe they're not interested. But generally, guys who are brought in, there's a missing picture. There's a missing piece of the puzzle. Could be injury related with Jamison Williams. They might want to see where he is along from the torn ACL. Maybe they didn't get to talk to him enough at the combine or pro days or what have you. So it's not necessarily 30 players we're targeting to draft. It's 30 players that we need more information on. So I wouldn't be high on Treylon Burks to the Eagles. I would go in a different direction. I think they need a more well-rounded receiver, a guy who can run routes and get separation. But that's me. Who knows where they are?
If there is a wide receiver left for them to bring in, playing to what you just said about it being a fact-finding mission as much as it is a scouting mission, I'd want to see London because he missed the end of the season too. That's why they brought Jamison Williams in to make sure the rehab is going the way it was. Same thing happened with London. He missed the tail end of the season because of
his pro day's late. He hasn't had his pro day. It's coming up. It might be tomorrow. I have to check on that. They are having
because
a
I'm
really
sure he
late
wanted to
pro
do
day.
the most he could do, so he wanted to give himself as much leg time as possible from the injury. He's a guy I'd like to see the Eagles bring in and then maybe draft him. I don't know if they should or shouldn't draft him. I kind of like Garrett Wilson better, but I think I know what I know about Garrett Wilson, and I hope the Eagles know what they know about Garrett Wilson. Maybe something from a London meeting could tell you more that you need to know. Maybe it even moves the needle on you. All right, we'll try and move the needle again tomorrow. We got 2 good guests coming your way. Game Day Kratz. It's a Friday, so we'll punch Eddie Kratz up. And Vinny Serrato, our pal, former general manager of the Washington Redskins, talk show host down in Baltimore these days, will also hop aboard with us. Partner, what time you coming over today? I already got the beer on ice.
That I gotta have more. I gotta do my draft stuff, and then I'll be over.
All
Get
right.
the beer. Yeah, make sure the beer's on.
You go write about 22 articles. I'll start on the barley and
22 beers
early.
You'll be on 22 when I'm done.
But we got to sober up because 22 hours from now you'll be right back with us here on Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.